أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And Jazakallah khair, and thank you to all of you for joining us once again on the Islamic Institute of Toronto's Resilient Hour. Today is the 27th night of Ramadan, and we welcome you to our Resilient Hour. Today we have a very special guest, Dr. Basma, and I will be introducing her in a couple of minutes. I want to remind you to subscribe to our YouTube and Facebook channels. If you are watching us on YouTube, you can hit the subscribe button below to get all of the updates and notifications of our activities and all of the things happening at IIT. We have some very encouraging feedback that we've been getting about our programs, and we encourage you to continue to do that. Give us your feedback in terms of what you like, in terms of improvements, etc. This year at the Islamic Institute of Toronto for Ramadan, we've tried to provide you with the programs that you would normally have at the Islamic Institute of Toronto, providing you with some community and some knowledge in the spirit of Ramadan. Tonight at 9:45, we have a special Ramadan program for the 27th night of Ramadan. So tune in, support us, and encourage your families and friends to support us. Eid prayers will be streamed online in terms of our Eid celebration. It will run from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. And there will be a pause for you to actually pray your Eid prayers at home. If you are interested in learning how to pray the Eid prayer, you can download a copy of the instructions on our website at www.islam.ca. Give us a call at any point during this call at 416-335-9173. During this talk and throughout the evening, our volunteers are driving around, answering calls, and working to make your donations easy for you. So again, the phone number is 416-335-9173, or you can donate at www.islam.ca. Today's speaker is Dr. Basma Abdelgafar. She is the Vice President of Maqasid Institute and Associate Professor of Public Policy. She is an international consultant on policy, governance, and Muslim affairs. She has consulted in a number of countries around the world, including Egypt, Qatar, Guyana, Bosnia, South Africa, Malaysia, Singapore, and Thailand. She obtained her PhD in public policy from Carleton University in Ottawa in 2003. She has been awarded several prestigious international and national scholarships and fellowships. Dr. Basma Abdelgafar has worked in government, academia, and the third sector. She is a founding member of the Public Policy in Islam Master's Program at Qatar Foundation, where she spent 5 years teaching and heading the program. For the past decade, she has taken a keen interest in public policy and governance in Muslim history, thought, institutions, and communities. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome Dr. Basma Abdelgafar, and we look forward to a discussion on morality in the Quran.
So this evening, I thought I would share with you a very brief summary of a 4-part series that I gave this Ramadan. And the importance of the subject, which is morality in the Quran, in my opinion, cannot be overstated. We are fasting in this beautiful month to pay tribute and show gratitude for Allah's gift to us of the Quran as a guidance, as a clear expression of discernment between right and wrong. So as Muslims, we have to know the difference between right and wrong and good and evil, and we have to know the basis of those distinctions within ourselves. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. In particular, we're going to talk about 4 elements that have to do with morality in the Quran: obligation, responsibility, sanction, and effort. There's also intention, but because of the duration of time we have, I've incorporated into the discussion. Normally, I would talk about that separately. So let's start with obligation. What is obligation? Well, an obligation is a condition in which we feel bound to act or think in a specific way. As a believer, moral obligation cannot result because of social pressure or because of a personal passion, because these are not based on our reason. The Quran states, "The soul and he who created it, so he inspired it as to what corrupts it and what makes it heedful." So from the very beginning, we are endowed with this moral awareness. Every human being, the Quran tells us, is an overseer over him or herself. That's in chapter 75, verse 14. So we have the power to use our faculties to do good or to do wrong. This is a light that is in absolutely every human being. But this focus on reason doesn't mean that we have the intellectual and emotional intelligence to distinguish between what is right and what is wrong. Beyond the essential duties, moral certainty gives way to doubt. And intelligence and feelings, as necessary as they are not sufficient factors. As Muslims, we turn to Allah for this guidance. We turn to God, to the Quran, and to the Sunnah of our beloved Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. We read in the Quran, "Only Allah fully knows the laws of advancement of the human soul. It may be that you hate something when it is good for you, and it may be that you love something that is bad for you, and Allah knows and you do not know." Chapter 2, 216. And elsewhere, it is stated, "You may dislike something in which Allah will place great benefit." So there's a humility about a Muslim that recognizes that in addition to our reason, in addition to the gift that we have been given of discernment, that every human being has, that we need revelation. And we as Muslims understand that both reason and revelation come from the same source. Now, moral obligation has some universal features because it applies to everybody. By definition, it is applicable universally. It applies to oneself as it does to others, to one's kin as it does to strangers, to friends as it does to enemies. So in order for moral obligation to be as such, it has certain criteria. First, there has to be possibility for action. You have to be able to carry out your duty. And the Quran tells us, Allah does not oblige any soul except to the extent that he has given it. He also states, we do not oblige any soul beyond its capacity. So when we cannot do something for any particular reason, it is not subject to moral obligation. The second criteria is that moral law in the Quran is gentle. The Quran states, Allah desires ease for you. He does not desire difficulty for you. He also states, He has chosen you and not placed any discomfiture in your religion. He states that Allah desires to lighten matters for you, and man was created weak. And finally, and we have not sent you except as a mercy to the worlds. So there's a gentleness about moral law in Islam. We have to have the capacity to bear what is demanded of us. And our lives obviously may affect our consistency in some of our duties. Sometimes it may prevent us from undertaking some duties completely. And that is part of the system of morality that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that God has designed for us in ourselves and in the Quran. Finally, duties are delimited and they're graded. So they're prioritized in different ways. And when we study the Quran and the Sunnah, and obviously human societies, we realize that every single one of us is a synthesis of personal, family, social, human relationships, and of course, our relationship with the divine. These elements are interdependent, they're tightly integrated, and they're subject to evolution over time as we grow, as we change. But the point is that none of these relationships can be neglected without us damaging our own well-being and the well-beings of those around us. So most people will define their duty within these relationships as a minimum. But for others, they will equate goodness with duty, which means that minimal standards are unacceptable and they're constantly striving for better and more meritorious actions. Now, Islam seeks to present us with two alternatives on a spectrum. One is the obligatory good, and the other is the recommended good. And it is constantly pushing us to go from the obligatory good or from our essential duties all the way to more meritorious duties and to refinements of our contributions. So the Quran will give us the example by saying, if a debtor cannot repay his debt, more time must be given, but forgiveness is recommended. It also tells us it is right to demand justice, but to forgive and overlook is better. To perform one's duty well is good, but to do good spontaneously is praiseworthy with Allah, with God subhanahu wa ta'ala. So those are the three criteria that determine the universality of moral obligation. Now, I cannot possibly, in the time we have, go through the duties that are enumerated in the Quran, but let's look at some of them. And these are the positive duties. The Quran has both positive duties and negative. The positive ones are the ones that exhort you to do something, and the negative are the ones that prohibit you or discourage you from doing something. So some of the positive, for instance, include to take care to inquire into one's duties and to teach others theirs, to exert moral effort, to conform to good examples, to have balanced behavior and actions, which holds the middle path, to be righteous, to strive to perform what is good or even best, to aim for the most beautiful actions, to speak the best words, to be sincere, to do good to your parents, and in particular, treating them with honor, obedience, tenderness, and concern, to treat our spouses well. And as we mature in our faith and in our understanding of Islam, to perform these and many other duties that are enumerated in the Quran to a much higher level of perfection. And in such a way, like when we do these, when we interact with these relationships on a daily basis and we cover or we undertake our duties, we essentially compose a page in our moral life. And inshallah, we reap the rewards for it. Now, I also want to draw your attention to the fact that when we're carrying out these duties as Muslims, our intentions have to be pure. Intention is very important in Islam. Intention signifies the purity of our hearts. And it indicates that when we carry out an obligation or we perform any good, that we are doing it only for the sake of God and for nothing else. So intention has three elements. One is that we have to understand what we're doing. The second is we have to want to do it. And the third is that we have to want to do it precisely because it is commanded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in other words, we look for the consent of the heart, the spontaneity of action, and delight and eagerness to perform our duties. The Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam stated, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ, which means that actions are judged according to their intention. Or more precisely, actions only exist morally through their intentions. So when an act doesn't have an intention, it is not considered part of the moral calculation. And he continued, alayhi salatu wasalam, and for each individual will be attributed only what he intended. And that is out of Allah's mercy. That is only what we intend that we either reap the reward of or, God forbid, the reprimand. So all ethical rules in the Quran contain a double imperative: to perform a duty and to realize a good, or to perform an essential duty and a duty of perfection. There is no compromise in our essential duties as Muslims, but with regard to the duty of perfection, there is more leniency, and the Quran uses a form of encouragement to push us more and more towards what is meritorious and what will move us closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his beloved Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. So that is the first element in understanding morality in the Quran. To be moral, number one is to understand your duties. Number two is to take on responsibility. So to be responsible is to be obliged to answer for something or be accountable to someone. And there's three types of responsibility. We're only going to look at one today, which is moral responsibility, but the other two are social and religious. And in Islam, of course, the religious and the moral overlap. So the Quran states, believers do not betray Allah and the Messenger or knowingly betray others by committing abuses of trust. So it reminds believers that they are to be faithful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, and to the contracts and promises that are binding upon them with others. So it reminds us to honor our pledges and all of the associated commandments. Any responsibility we have to keep in mind, whether personal or social, is subordinated to religious responsibility, which means that if it defies our religion, that we are not to undertake it, whether or not we have contracted to do so. We have to find a way out of it. Everything we do has to be divinely approved. Because responsibility is ultimately personal in Islam. You are responsible for you. Everyone is going to be questioned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Quran tells us, for the soul is what it has earned, against it what it has acquired. And whoever accrues a bad deed, he only accrues it against his own soul. Whoever is guided is only guided for his own soul, and whoever is misguided is only misguided to his detriment, and no soul will bear the burden of another. It also states, fear a day when no parent will be able to atone for his child or child for his parent. And the Prophet, ﷺ, further instructed us that everyone will be questioned regarding in what occupation he spent his or her life, for what motive he or she acted, from what source he or she made their fortune, and how it was used, and how did we use our own bodies. In other words, everyone will be questioned regarding their trusts. All of these are trusts and gifts from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and no blame can be reassigned to anyone. In order for us to be responsible, we have to be made aware of the rules. So we have to be made aware of the duties that I just spoke about, right? And we're told in the Quran that information is provided both internally and externally. Moral rules are inscribed both within us. We read in the Quran, أَلْهَمَهَا فُجُورَهَا وَتَقْوَاهَا. We're told in the Quran that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taught the self what elevates it and what debases it. So that which is inscribed within us is universal. Everybody has that basis, as I said when I was talking about obligation. However, we need revelation to continue our illumination and to understand what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us. Ramadan, in fact, is, as I said, the most incredible month, because in this month we are actually bearing witness that we received this discernment. So as Muslims, we have no excuse. Nobody can come on the Day of Judgment and say, I didn't know, it did not come to my personal attention. We're fasting this month, basically admitting that we have this beautiful book of guidance and discernment with us. Our duty then is to understand what it is telling us. So in order to be responsible, the law has to have been made available. We have to be in the correct state to receive it. And it must have been brought to our personal attention. This is out of Allah's mercy and his justice towards us. We also have to keep in mind that we have to be in a state of remembrance from the perspective of divine justice. So forgetfulness is a natural phenomenon which does not result in an intentional act or personal fault. Once you remember, then you resume your rightful activities. And what was within the forgetfulness is not counted. Alhamdulillah. So are we responsible for what we don't know? No. If it is an involuntary action, we are not. All involuntary action is removed from the realm of responsibility. In Quranic terms, it does not constitute something the soul has earned, right? So morally, it is important to understand that there is no obedience or disobedience unless there is a correspondence between the action as it was commanded or forbidden. We read in the Quran, Allah will not take you to account for the literal expressions of your oaths, but he will take you to account for what is in your hearts. Again, the very important dimension of intention. If you are convinced that you're not violating the law, there can be no reproach, even if what you're doing is misguided. The Quran states, your Lord is better acquainted with what is in your inner selves. If you are righteous, then he is toward those who turn to him forgiving. So all acts have to be voluntary and deliberate to warrant responsibility. Our third element then is sanction. Sanction is an approval or penalty that occurs, if we're talking about morality, within us when we carry out our duties. So we can either neglect the duty or we can carry it out in a way that was not complete or not satisfactory. So sanction, in essence, is the reaction of the law to our attitude. The law starts when we learn about it by appealing to our goodwill. It obliges us to respond, and then we answer yes or no, bearing our responsibility. The law interprets that attitude and it gives its sanction. Now, moral sanction entails the consequences that we benefit or suffer on account of observing or neglecting the law. You know, when you do something that, you don't do it very well and you begin to feel this upset inside your chest that something, was wrong, that you didn't complete it to your satisfaction. That is an example of sanction. That feeling either of sadness and remorse or of satisfaction. So really, moral law is useless or meaningless for those who've lost their sense of good and evil. Every form of conduct, every form, whether good or evil, gives rise to a corresponding inner state. And that is out of Allah's mercy for us, so we can self-correct. So we know when we've done something that is incorrect. However, obviously remorse and sanction are insufficient penalties. When we do something that is incorrect or we don't complete our duty to the extent that we should, then we have to develop a new attitude. The Quran encourages us to develop a new attitude so that we can reach that inner equilibrium once more. And obviously, if it is something, that is haram or that is a sin, we are asked to repent. And repentance requires three things. First of all, we desist from the wrongdoing immediately. Second, we make amends for the past. And third, we participate in a better future. So sanction is extremely important for us to correct ourselves. And it is important for us to remain sensitive to that inner voice that tries to help us onto that correct path again. And for those who strive, there is support from the divine, from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In the Quran we read, God shows the path to those who strive towards him. He guides their hearts. He leads them out of darkness into light. For those who observe the truth and righteousness in their words, he will rectify the sins of their actions. For those who piously observe his commands, he will give the power to discern a true and false, good and bad. He will grant them a guiding light. So alhamdulillah, there is guidance with this striving to be on the right path. Because of our time, I'm going to skip to something important, which is, you're noticing that I'm talking a lot about our attitude. And I want us, inshallah, to come out of this Ramadan more in tune with our attitude to the Quran, our attitude to the commands of Islam, our attitude to knowledge, and everything that this beautiful religion encourages us to undertake. So by staying attuned to our attitude, what I'm asking you to do is think about how you receive divine guidance. And the Quran reveals three attitudes. The first is a clearly welcoming attitude, a favorable attitude towards order and discipline to varying degrees. God's presence is perceived and welcomed within a loving framework. And a believer finds in this idea that which sustains their effort, nourishes their energy, raises their soul. They multiply the demands on themselves because it makes them happy to be a practicing mu'min, Muslim. Then we have a generally well-disposed attitude towards the law. But this doesn't exclude the possibility of sin. You know, it's either good or it could be evil, and it's somewhere in the middle. And this duality is where most believers are. And then finally, we have the complacent attitude, complacent being COMPLAISENT, not the other complacent. So a pleasing attitude, one that still accepts the law, but that is more likely to bend for social circumstances and exceptions. And that is the least of the three. And what we want to do as Muslims is move from the complacent attitude, which is still pleasing, alhamdulillah, but we move towards a clearly welcoming attitude of divine law and knowledge. And that is the higher level that will move us into more and more meritorious acts and needs. I'm going to stop at that because of our time. There's so much more I'd love to share with you tonight, but because of time limits, we can leave that for another time, inshallah, or for questions.
Jazakallah khair, Sister Basma. I just have a quick question. So you spoke a lot about, kind of pushing yourself to reach higher moral grounds and to do things that are, more meritorious to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How can we practically do this, especially in a world where there's so much moral relativity? How can we, push ourselves to do these actions or these deeds that are even better than what we're used to?
Well, the first thing we have to realize is what are our essential duties? I mean, we have to be able to distinguish between what is essential and what is meritorious. So what is our baseline as Muslims? A lot of people have lost sight of what is the baseline. I mean, there is a baseline in Islam. They're outlined. I have a book. I will send it to you and you can send it to your readers. I'll send you an e-copy.
Allah.
Basically, what it does is it sets out those essential duties. Nice, clear, concise, this is what we ought to do. This is what we can't do. But then beyond that, to move towards merit means that you've understood those essentials. You've taken them into yourself. You've incorporated them into who you are, but then you reproduce them in the world in a much more beautiful way. So it's not just being nice to your parents. It's also sensing their feelings. It's being merciful. It's, spontaneously buying a bouquet of flower for your mom, or cooking dinner for her when she wasn't expecting it, or popping in when she hasn't seen you for about a week. It's saying a kind word when you're tired. It's that extra mile that moves us into the meritorious. And for me, I don't believe in the relativity argument. I think we, subhanAllah, as believers, we know what it means to move to greater and greater merit. We know what it means to control our anger. We know what it means to be more generous, to give more, to be kinder. I think all humanity in a way knows that, subhanAllah.
Okay, Jazakallah. Thank you very much for that. And I know that you have your iftar, you will be breaking your fast before us in Ottawa. So Jazakallah khair for really sharing with us, some ways that we can improve our practice of religion and we can really connect with Allah a lot deeper. Jazakallah khair, Sister Basma. We appreciate the time.
It was absolutely my pleasure. And inshallah, I will send you that reference so everybody can have a deeper look at this. And inshallah, I hope to see you again in the future, all of you. And may Allah accept everybody's fast and accept all of the best of everybody's dua on this beautiful night. I pray to Allah, inshallah, that we meet in peace in dunya, and even more that we meet in the company of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam in akhirah, and that we are of the very fortunate who will get to see Allah's face subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa alayhi wa sahbihi wa sallam.
Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Okay, so again, to everybody that's listening here today, Jazakallah khair for joining us tonight and for supporting us throughout this entire Ramadan. We have really felt the encouragement, and we, encourage you to continue giving us feedback. First off, I would like to thank our ASL interpreter today, Sister Rana. And we've had ASL interpretation through a lot of our programs, and in person at IIT, we also have ASL interpretation. It's part of what we would like to do at Islamic Institute of Toronto to make knowledge and community spirit accessible to everyone. And so Jazakallah khair for participating with us and for making this program accessible to people, who would not be able to access the program otherwise. I was saying before that, we've seen some encouraging feedback from people throughout this Ramadan. And I just wanted to share one story with you of our chairman, Brother Fareed. Recently, he received a phone call that someone had passed away, and he was responsible for completing this sister's rites, her last rites. But when he went into her home, he actually realized that she had some of IIT's material available to her, and she was really connected to our community. So that was something that was a really beautiful story to hear. Our Brother Jamil on our board and Brother Fareed on our chairman have been driving around and collecting donations, and we've really seen some positive responses to our programming, to people who have been engaging with our programming. So Jazakallah khair for that. And we look forward to more feedback from you. So, if you want to comment on our Facebook, on our YouTube, even on our Google page, Google Maps page, feel free to comment and to let us know how our programming is going and your connection with IIT during this time. We've been really trying our best to deliver some of the programs that we normally have at IIT and to provide our community with knowledge and the spirit that we normally have during Ramadan. And so we have our 5 a.m. and 5 p.m. Quranic recitation with some of our youth reciting Quran. We also have the Resilient Hour, which you've been listening to, as well as Gems of the Quran at 9:45. We also have some additional programming, such as for our seniors. But tonight we have something really, really special, and we encourage you to participate, to tune in, and to encourage your families to do so as well. Tonight at 9:45, we have a special Ramadan program for the 27th night of Ramadan. And so we want you to support us. IIT really needs you at this time. And so, at any point, if you would like to donate during this call or throughout the night, feel free to give us a call at 416-335-9173. Our volunteers are actually driving around, they are answering the phones, and they're really participating in making your donation extremely easy. So again, the number is 416-335-9173, and I really encourage you to support us during these last 10 nights, especially when there's so much blessing and so much reward for your donation and for your community spirit and for the ibadah that you do during this time. Be part of the 1 in 1,000 people to donate and support our goal at IIT, education for a virtuous living. So we really encourage you to participate in that. A lot of people are wondering what we'll be doing for Eid. Inshallah, we'll be streaming a program for Eid, similar to how we would normally have a program starting at 8 a.m. and ending at 10 a.m. We will be having the takbirat, which I would encourage you to participate in. Get dressed in your Eid clothes, feel the spirit of Eid. And then we'll also be leaving some time for you to actually pray in your homes. So if you'd like some information of how to pray the Eid Salah in your homes, you can find a download of the instructions at www.islam.ca. Again, I would really like to encourage you to be part of this great mission that we have at IIT. We're so happy to provide you with this content in terms of knowledge, community spirit, and Islamic education. And we want you to be part of building this with us. So again, be part of the 1 in 1,000 and give us a call at 416-335-9173. I'd like to turn it to our Qari, Brother Taha, who is actually a student of our Qari Abdul Fattah. And so I'd like to turn it to him to give us some beautiful recitation of the Quran. This is a great time for us to connect to the Quran in these last 10 nights. And so I'd like to turn it to you, Taha, to give us, Qari Taha, to give us a recitation of the Quran, followed by the adhan, inshallah. Jazakallah khair, and I hope to see all of you joining us at 9:45 p.m. on all of our channels, YouTube, Facebook. Participate, encourage your family, and share the word.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها المزمل قم الليل إلا قليلا نصفه أو انقص منه قليلا أو زد عليه ورتل القرآن ترتيلا إنا سنلقي عليك قولا ثقيلا إن ناشئة الليل هي أشد وطئا وأقوم قيلا إن لك في النهار سبحا طويلا واذكر اسم ربك وتبتل إليه تبتيلا رب المشرق والمغرب لا إله إلا هو فاتخذه وكيلا واصبر على ما يقولون واهجرهم هجرا جميلا وذرني والمكذبين أولي النعمة ومهلهم قليلا إن لدينا أنكالا وجحيما وطعاما ذا غصة وعذابا أليما يوم ترجف الأرض والجبال وكانت الجبال كثيبا مهيلا إنا أرسلنا إليكم رسولا شاهدا عليكم كما أرسلنا إلى فرعون رسولا فعصى فرعون الرسول فأخذناه أخذا وبيلا فكيف تتقون إن كفرتم يوما يجعل الولدان شيبا السماء منفطر به كان وعده مفعولا إن هذه تذكرة فمن شاء اتخذ إلى ربه سبيلا إن ربك يعلم أنك تقوم أدنى من ثلثي الليل ونصفه وثلثه وطائفة من الذين معك والله يقدر الليل والنهار.
Jazakallah khair, Brother Taha. If you could just say the adhan for us, it is actually time to break our fast, and we sincerely thank you for the beautiful recitation. It is 8:41, and it is the time for the breaking of the fast. So if you could say the adhan for us, that would be great. Jazakallah.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله